Good
It's a
morning.
lovely day in Texas today. The north wind has come in. The temperature dropped 20 degrees since yesterday.
Oh, good.
Yay. It was
Yeah,
102 earlier this week.
forget it. Forget that. No way, man. Let me make sure that we are up on YouTube. We are streaming on LinkedIn. Looks like it's okay. Let's just open the chat here. That way, if anybody comes through and they start chatting, I can see them.
Good.
Okay. All right. I think we're good. I think we're good. Welcome back. Where were you? You were speaking at a Dev Days, weren't you,
I
recently?
was at, let's see, DevOps Days Dallas. It was a great
Oh, okay.
conference and everybody loved it. It was so much fun. It was terrific.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I've been busy and you've been busy.
Yeah, I was busy. I went to Tekorama, and that was really cool. That I had spoken there before.
Mhm.
The Netherlands, Tekorama, the Netherlands. You know what I love about that conference is the branding. I'm the marketing lady, so they just have such great branding and fun stuff. This time it was a fun fair. I don't know if you saw my pictures. They had a fun fair theme at
I
Tekorama.
saw that.
They had a fun house and games and all these performers. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
That sounds great. Well,
Yeah.
I had a great week too, speaking
Cool.
in Dallas, and then I have
Nice.
another talk tomorrow night on online with IEEE Women in Engineering, and anyone
Ooh.
can come. It's free. You just need to sign up. I'll post that on LinkedIn this
Oh
morning.
yeah. Good. Good.
Yeah,
Good. We
it's
wanted to talk about trust, I think, this week.
yes,
That's
trust.
kind of come up a couple of times since we talked last. Um,
Mhm.
you go ahead. You go ahead. Kick it off. When we're thinking about trust in the workplace, what are some things that are important to
I'm
keep
just
in
going to talk about trust in general and
mind? Ah,
how when trust is high, productivity is high, and costs are low. So that's sort of the ideal place to be, where your productivity is high and your costs are low. When
mhm.
trust is low, your productivity is low because you're worried about what's going on and maybe there's going to be a layoff or a reorg or whatever, and costs go up and productivity goes down. So trust really has a big impact. And let me give you a simple example that everybody who's been alive for more than 20 years can relate to,
Sure.
or more than 24 years. Um, Before 9/11, it was a relatively simple thing to go to the airport and get on an airplane.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
After 9/11, the trust had gone down. We couldn't trust that maybe some other person on the plane was going to blow the plane up or crash the plane or whatever.
Right.
So we added a whole layer of security, in fact, multiple layers, but
Multiple
one
layers.
of
Yeah.
one of which is a whole bunch of TSA employees, a whole bunch of screening things, a whole bunch of lines to stand in.
That's right. Lines to stand in. I was thinking.
Initially, after that event, we had agents, security agents, riding in the first couple of rows of first class. They were there to be able to guard against any intruders who tried to go into the cockpit. I think that's ended.
Establish a presence right there. Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't have
Uh,
that.
but think about the costs. Think about the costs of all that, all that, all those layers of,
Yeah, you have the equipment, you have the personnel,
yeah.
you have all of the tools that they need, you need the
Air, air,
infrastructure.
yeah. Airports had to reconfigure themselves
Mhm.
so that we could add that. Um, there were a lot of costs, and costs not in money, not only in money, but also in time.
Mm,
Think how long now in Austin you have to get to the airport 2.5 hours before your flight. Now,
yes.
I can remember a time long ago when I would get to the airport about 15 minutes before my flight, and I'd just dash. And
Yeah.
I'd just
Yeah.
run to the and
Run
for
in, they say, "Oh, hi, hello," give you your ticket real quick, take your bag, boom, boom, it's gone. And then you're
Yeah.
just right up there to the gate. You could even have people walk you to the gate.
Yes,
I
that's right.
remember my mom she could walk me directly to the gate before I got onto the plane. And
That's
everybody
right.
would just stand there and wave at the gate
Yeah.
and smoke. They were smoking cigarettes, right?
The smoke hadn't the stopping of smoking didn't have anything to do with 9/11, but it was a different time for
That
sure.
was a different time, right? I remember.
Yeah.
Man. Flying
But
is so different now.
flying is different now, and so what that reflects is a lack of trust, because some people broke the trust that you could trust that nobody was a bad actor.
Right.
Nobody was going to try to crash your plane.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, there was a little bit of that fear I think it was in the 70s when we had people hijacking planes.
Oh.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Woo.
But there would be people who would hijack planes and then land and get a bunch of money and then take off and bail out in a parachute.
Wow.
And I think one of them was found about 20 or 30 years later, maybe more, maybe 40 years later, his bones and his money. Anyway, trust is critical to having efficient operations, because if you don't have trust, people are going to have some barriers. And I notice one thing, when a company is considering having a layoff, it somehow seeps out, or maybe their performance hasn't been good, and people don't trust that their jobs are safe.
Yes.
And so if they're in office, there's a whole lot more chatting and just quiet discussions about, what do you think is happening? What have you heard? And that just takes away from productive time.
Yeah.
And people are trying to divine the meaning of various activities. Oh, I saw so-and-so go into his office.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That must mean that we're going to have a layoff.
There was a lot of conjecture. My late husband's company, they used to do that all the time. And they would be like, oh, somebody's going to come in and buy us. And there was always this side chats all the time. And they weren't sure who was going to get this. And are they going to wipe out an entire department or not? Or is somebody going to get promoted? All of this occupies their mind. It certainly occupied his. And then, instead of actually focusing on what they're there to do, there's all this psychological distrust happening, insecurity, really.
Right. And so nobody likes to be in an untrusting relationship and an untrusting environment. But let's move on from there. What can you as a leader do to build a trusting environment where your productivity is going to go up and your costs are going to go down? What can you as a leader do? And so that's something that we talk about in our Friday leadership practicum, and that's how you practice it. But I would say that there are a number of things you can do. First is listen to your employees, and really listen to see what's going on with them. And there's a bit of a conflict here. It's important for leaders to know what's going on with their employees so that they can kind of get a gauge for how they can help that employee have a good career. And there's also, given that lack of trust, employees are reluctant to share personal details.
Right.
We saw that, I think it was in Kansas City when we were giving a talk there, and one person didn't want to give away any details. She said, that's none of your business. That's personal. That's my business. And I'm thinking, wow, that really cuts into the ability of a leader to really move people into roles where it will be good for their career. So a little contrast, little conflict there. But aside from that, so you communicate well, you listen, you're present, be present. Don't be looking at your devices while you're talking to somebody.
Mhm.
Don't be looking over that somebody's shoulder to see if anybody important is coming down the hall. Um, and engage them, and
Mm.
enlist them and engage them. So say you're working on a new plan and you know that one of your employees would be very interested in this plan. So
Sure.
you invite them in and give them some background and say, I respect you and I would love to have your feedback and input on this, and we can come up with a plan together. And that helps, that builds trust, and it helps to empower the employees, which is really the ultimate goal, is to empower the employees. Actually, the ultimate goal is to have trust. But
Mhm.
uh, those are all some ways that leaders can build trust in their organization. So, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, it's interesting because when you brought up the topic and you said, "Hey, Christina, trust," it was I was just texting. I was literally just like, "Hey, what about our topic? What do we think about?" And that something had struck me earlier. I was watching the so I'm working on a parody of a song with the Line Breakers. Maybe you I'm gonna pitch it to Dylan of the Line Breakers. They do parody songs for the tech industry. It's awesome. And I was working on this and for the Rainbow Connection for Kermit's song. And I wrote a parody and I was looking at the origin of it and I was listening to the story, and
Mhm.
this is just the coolest story. And it's exactly about trust. So, when they were making the first Muppets movie, right, Jim Henson hired Paul Woods he wrote the music. He enlisted Kenny Asher, right? And so together they wrote the music for the Muppets movie, the first ever, right? It was their big cinematography debut, their full length preview movie, and they were tasked to write the music. And it was a big deal, right? They had a lot riding on it. It was their first thing. And when they came to Jim Henson, they said, all right, so do you want to kind of hear the music? Give us your feedback and listen along the way. We can set something up where we'll write something, we'll send it to you. We'll record the music, we'll resend it to you. We'll put the tracks on top, and then you can listen to the entire composition before we. And he said, no, you know what? I think it'll be fine. It'll be great, whatever you come up with it. We'll just see it in the studio. And so to have some kind of trust that's so deep for your composer that you would say, no, you know what? Just go ahead, put it all together. We'll see it in the studio. We'll see what it looks like. He said, that's a love, that's a level of trust that is so immense. And there's so much riding on the success of this. It really says something about what he thought of Kenny Asher and I, but it says more about what he thought of his own choices, that he trusted his heart. He trusted that he'd chosen the right people to do this, and he gave us permission to write whatever we felt, and we gave him the Rainbow Connection. Right.
Wow.
And so it is a universal song that anybody hears it, it catches you right here in the heart, right? And there's this hopefulness at the end, but also this whimsy to it. And it's such a heartfelt song. And again, how to your point of how you were saying the trust and the
Mhm.
efficiency. And so that's what they did. They wrote the entire thing. They didn't have restrictions. They didn't have Jim Henson in there going, oh, but change this line and this word and this lyric. And what about if we flip flop that? None of that happened. And it came out and it was obviously a classic. Oh, look, hey, we have Aunt. Hi, Aunt. Aunt says, the Muppets. Yeah, Aunt loves the Muppets. Who's your favorite Muppets character, Aunt? I always love Animal, our friend Aunt. Everybody go say hi to Aunt Blair. Follow Aunt Blair if you're on LinkedIn or YouTube or all the places. I think he's on Instagram too. But Aunt Blair, he has some cool content. Yeah, I love the Muppets, but it just goes to talk about, yes, there was that level of trust for the employees and for the people and the creatives working on the project, but also great trust for himself. Now, this is how we do things at Arana too, right? And I remember the very first time, how you do one thing is how you do anything. I remember the very first time when I traveled. Of course, my Jay and I are partners, and we work together, and we have two young children at the time, and we both travel because we both speak. And I remember we traveled, and it was like maybe the very first time away from the children, my experience, right? And his mom was staying with the children, and I said, "Aren't you going to call her? Aren't you going to check in? Do you need to call, check on the children?" And he looked at me and he said, "No, she's got it. If I didn't trust her to handle the kids, like, I wouldn't have left them to begin with." And that's really how he manages projects and staff and everybody at Arana too. It's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same. Julie says, so true. Sometimes our work gets picked at so much, it's completely sanitized. Yeah. Thanks, Julie. Absolutely. It's my friend Julie Kapnick, a brilliant marketer, fantastic COO. She's in Michigan. Hi, Jules. Hi. Oh, look, an Ant here. He says his favorite Muppet characters, the old guys in the balcony. That's right. The old guys in the balcony. Everybody loves the Muppets. That's funny.
Yeah, that's
Have
great.
you had that experience? And I imagine you're probably that type of leader as well when you had multiple teams.
Yeah. I can't make all the decisions.
Right.
You hire people because you think they're smart and capable.
Yeah.
And in fact, part of trust is that the people have to be smart and capable. You have to know that you can trust them to be able to figure out how to get the work done, and trust them to get the work done.
That's right.
That's the capable part. So when you hire people, you're hiring them to be the brilliant people that you want on your team.
Yeah.
And so then to turn around and not trust them is really doing a disservice. So my feeling was, I could trust these people because I knew they were talented and capable. And so that's always an important.
You don't want to micromanage them. It
No,
takes up too much of your day. You got to do your job.
We have time for that.
Right.
So, and I'm thinking about the story that you just told about the Muppets.
Mhm. Yeah.
How did it make those writers feel, the musicians and writers? It made them feel empowered. It made them feel great.
Exactly.
It made them feel trusted. And it made them it inspired them to want to reach the heights that
Yes.
they were entrusted with. So
I was very insecure in my younger days and very small, and was used to being told what to do. So I remember it, in my early 30s, I had a manager who we were working on stuff, and I was like, well, this is what we have. This is the thing. What do you want me to do? And he went, well, what do you think we should do? I went, what? He's like, well, you're the one who's been talking to the customers. You've been talking to the clients. You know what they think, you know the process. What do you think we should do? And I said, well, I think we should do it like this. He's like, all right, cool. Let's do that. And it worked, and it was great. And he said, thanks. Great job. And that was the very first time for me that it was so effortless. I was like, wow, this is great. I stayed with that boss for like 3.5 years.
Yeah. You want to stay with a boss that you can trust.
Yeah.
And that trusts you. It's a two-way street. Yeah. So, I've been teaching leadership development programs for many, many years. And at first I thought that the big issue was communications. They had to learn to communicate effectively.
If they just talk to each other, it'd be okay.
Right. And then as I would dig a little deeper, I thought, no, it's not just communications. It's also listening and paying attention and being present. And then I came to the realization that at the bottom of this
Mm,
was a culture of trust, and it really depended on getting to that culture of trust to
yeah.
make your organization really flow, really function at a high level, and everybody's in the game and ready to go.
Yeah.
And I mean, the inspiration that you get from a good leader
Right.
is that you can do stuff that you thought was maybe not possible, but now
Yeah.
you think you can do stuff that's not possible. And I think about people at NASA, how, how they must have had some pretty good leaders
Right.
to be inspired to do some work that was so never
In
done before,
and
innovation, and
completely.
just really, really great innovative work. And I think that Steve Jobs was a good leader and got people to do things that were very innovative.
Yes.
And he wanted to inspire them to do innovative things. I'm not sure that he trusted them as
Right.
much,
Right.
but he knew he had to inspire them
Yes.
rather than, be a micromanager.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just want to talk about
And
her
having the
role.
words and the language to trust, phrases like, well, what do you think we should
Yeah,
do? And,
right.
like I said, when my boss had told me, and he was the last boss I had, by the way, before I went out on my own, he said, um, what you're the expert, you're the one who's in it, you're the one who's doing it. Why don't we see what you have to say? It
Yeah.
really put that perspective for me where I felt a lot more secure. I felt a lot more capable because
Hmm.
somebody that I trusted in their judgment believed in me. You know?
Hmm.
And that's a lot of what I do when I mentor as well, right? When I
Hmm.
mentor young students or even people who are transitioning into tech, that's the kind of stuff that we talk about. And in our practicum, of course, our leadership practicum, we do the second Friday of every month, and you can get tickets at luckyandleslie.com. It's just $27, and we do a 1 hour practicum where we speak for a little bit about the lesson, and then we actually role play what that looks like and the phrases and the language that is best to be used. And that, I think, once, like I said before, you've heard me talk about it with neuroplasticity, once those neural pathways are made and they're connected, when you re-stimulate them and re-stimulate them, you improve. This is how we learn. It
Hmm.
imprints it into our nervous system. And so even just having one role-playing conversation can significantly change the way that you negotiate, the way that you work, the way that you communicate with your boss, the way you communicate with your team if you have subordinates. So it can really make a difference.
And when you talk about negotiation, it's such an important topic, and a lot of my friends in the computer science industry think of themselves as, I'm a coder, I'm a
Yes,
developer, I'm an engineer. I'm not a used car salesman. I don't
right,
negotiate. But in
right.
fact, they negotiate every day, and
Every day.
they're negotiating trade offs. Should we add this functionality? Shall we not add it because it's going to take too much time, or we have time to do it? They negotiate stuff all the time, and they just don't realize that they're negotiating when they say, I think we should do it this way, or I think we should add this feature. Um, they're
Right.
negotiating.
You want to
And
be
for
able to
them to be
negotiate.
good at negotiating, they need to learn how. And it's not hard to teach, and it can be so creative and so
Mm,
fun. And so
yeah.
I love that part of it. And part of it does involve trust. So whether you're a brand new coder or a sales executive, you're negotiating every day.
That's right.
And you can learn a lot from the kind of work we do with people. So
Mhm.
Wanted
Mhm.
to throw that in
And
because
we've
it's
done our long form too. We've done our long form workshop. I guess it's important to mention. So
Mhm.
we have a 4-hour workshop, and that really gets deeper into emotional resilience, into how we learn, and also we do different scenarios that are well tried and true. I mean, that we all have to deal with in the workplace, right? Things like how to
Mhm.
deal with a prima donna, how to deal with a manager who's trying to shift your schedule around, just things like that that happen regularly, that sometimes if you don't know how to respond, you might react just real quickly and not get the result that you want.
Yeah.
So
Or go home and be completely frustrated and start drinking or binging on TV or
yeah,
binging on potato chips.
potato chips, anything, just one by one by one. I'll just sit in
Yeah.
the fridge one by one by one. Popcorn, whatever. One by
Yeah, but just being miserable. And
miserable.
and that happens when people don't work together in a communication that is effective, creative, and trusting. So
Yeah, for sure.
important to learn all those skills. But trust, it comes down to trust, which is a surprise to me. I thought it was
Communication.
communication, but then as I worked through it over the years, I figured it out. Took me a while. I figured it out.
Well, it's a really good topic, and I'm glad you picked it because, like I said, it was right in alignment too with my Muppet story, where I
Yeah,
was
I love your
doing my
Muppet
background
story.
research, and what great gift! Like, no wonder why it just came out. And he said, I love that. He said, he gave us permission to write whatever we felt, and we gave him the rainbow connection, right? I mean, it's a perfect example of
That is
trust.
such a good example and a memorable example. So
Yeah,
great.
absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Leslie. As usual, it's great chatting
Thank
with
you, Christina. Always fun.
you. See you I guess not tomorrow, next week, I guess.
Next
Next
week.
week at
Yep.
this time, 7 a.m. Pacific and 9
9
Central.
a.m. Central.
We are on YouTube, we are on my Facebook, and we are on my LinkedIn Live.
Great.
Excellent.
Excellent.
All right, I'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye bye.
Cool. That worked. And we even had 2 people. We had comments.